Good morning, everyone. Today is the third day of the HOPE meeting. First, we have Dr. Kajita's lecture. Let me introduce the moderator for this session, Dr. Atsushi Takeda from Tokyo University. Please welcome Dr. Takeda.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining lecture 5 will be given by Dr. Takaaki Kajita. I'm Atsushi Takeda, moderator of Dr. Takaaki Kajita. I'd like to introduce him. Dr. Kajita is a university distinguished professor at the University of Tokyo, and also a professor at the Institute for Cosmic Ray Research, University of Tokyo. He was awarded a Nobel Prize in Physics in 2015 for the discovery of neutrino oscillation, which shows that neutrinos have mass. It was a very epoch-making discovery, extended the standard model of elementary particles. The award was based on his analysis result presented in Neutrino International Conference held in Takayama City, Gifu Prefecture, 1998. In the conference, the distribution, angular distribution of atmospheric muon neutrino clearly shows neutrino oscillation with large significance and reliability. At that time, I was a university undergraduate student. I remember being so excited to hear his discovery requiring extension of standard model of elementary particle. Okay, title of today's presentation is Discovery of Neutrino Oscillation. About 45 minutes lecture, and after that, 15 minutes Q&A session. If you have any question, please do not hesitate to ask him. Okay, then, yeah, Professor, could you please start your presentation?
Good morning. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the kind introduction. But today, I'm going to talk about the discovery of neutrino oscillations. First, you see a photo. This is inside of the Super Kamiokande detector. And we have been working with this detector for many years to study neutrinos. The outline of this talk is like this. First, I will briefly discuss what are neutrinos. Then, I want to discuss the early days of our study on neutrinos. Then I want to move on to the discovery of neutrino oscillations. And also, I want to briefly mention about the solar neutrino oscillations. And before finishing this talk, actually, I want to tell you what I am doing now, and I want to summarize this talk. Okay, what are neutrinos? Well, about 100 years ago, people knew that some nucleus change to a different nucleus by emitting an electron. Well, this should be simple, but in this case, the energy of the electron should be uniquely determined. But observations suggested that actually the electron energy is continuous. well, people are puzzled. What happened? Well, then, on December 4th, 1930, Wolfgang Pauli wrote a letter to Dear radioactive ladies and gentlemen. Well, actually, this letter was written because he was unable to attend the conference. Instead, he wrote a letter. And in fact, in this letter, he proposed a solution to this nuclear beta decay problem. And well, in fact, he proposed when a nucleus emits an electron, at the same time, new invisible particle should be emitted. Then we can naturally explain that the electron energy spectrum is continuous. So this was the initial idea on neutrino oscillation. On neutrinos. Sorry. By the way, I think this was really a great idea. Well, nowadays, we scientists are evaluated. We are asked how many papers you wrote. But 100 years ago, even if you have this kind of great idea, he didn't write paper. He just wrote a letter to the audience of the conference. He even didn't attend the meeting. Simply, he wrote a letter. So I think maybe 100 years ago, the scientific community was much healthier. Well, okay, anyway. Well, since we have this kind of idea, people begin to seriously consider this possibility. Therefore, as time goes on, people really want to discover this kind of hypothetical particle, neutrino. In fact, in 1946, Bruno Pontecorvo proposed to use the inverse beta process to detect the neutrinos. And based on this idea, in 1956, Frederick Reines and Cohen observed interaction of anti-electron neutrinos that were generated by nuclear plant of, nuclear plant. So, in the middle of this panel, you see the detector they used to observe or to discover neutrinos. Well, at the time, this was really a big detector. And in fact, by this discovery, Reines was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics 40 years later, 1995. Anyway, at the time, experimental neutrino physics was born. Well, of course, since then, there have been many studies of neutrinos. So therefore, let me summarize what we understood on neutrinos. Neutrinos are fundamental particles like electrons, quarks. And neutrinos are, I would say, something like electrons, but without electric charge. And in fact, this has a profound impact, and neutrinos can easily pass through even the Earth. But fortunately to us, neutrinos can interact with matter very rarely. Although the neutrino interaction is very rare, but sometimes these neutrinos interact. Therefore, it's possible for us to study neutrinos. And neutrinos have, like the other particles, three types or three flavors, namely electron neutrinos, muon neutrinos, and tau neutrinos. And neutrinos have been assumed to have no mass. And finally, I want to tell you how we can detect neutrinos. Well, of course, we can never see neutrinos themselves, but a neutrino could interact with a nucleus. Then, in this case, typically a charged particle is emitted, and we have various ways to observe these charged particles. For example, if this particle propagates in the water, then photons are emitted. Therefore, if we have photodetectors, then we can observe these photons, and this is the evidence for charged particle propagation in the water. So this way, we can observe neutrinos. Okay, now I'd like to move on to the early days of our study. Let me introduce the Kamiokande detector. Well, first of all, I want to discuss why people wanted to construct a Kamiokande detector. About 50 years ago, a new theory called grand unified theories of elementary particles were proposed, and these theories predicted that protons should decay with the lifetime of about 10 to 30 years. Well, of course, 10 to 30 years is extremely long. Therefore, in our daily life, well, proton lifetime doesn't matter. But the proton decay, observation of proton decay had really a fundamental importance to prove the new idea of grand unified theories. By the way, these theories predicted that the forces, fundamental forces, should be unified. So this kind of idea is extremely important. Therefore, several proton decay experiments began in the early 80s, and one of them was the Kamiokande experiment. And the Kamiokande experiment, the sketch of the Kamiokande experiment is shown here. It is a very large water detector. It contained 3,000 tons of clean water inside, and the container had about 16 meters in diameter and 16 meters high. And if a proton in one of the, inside the water decay at that time, then charged particles should be emitted. And therefore, we should be able to observe these particles by observing photons. And therefore, we installed photodetectors at the inner surface of the water tank. Well, certainly at that time, I was convinced that this experiment must be a very important experiment. Well, at that time, I was a 22-year-old graduate course student, but I was really excited to hear this experiment. So therefore, I joined this experiment. By the way, you may not know the location of the Kamiokande experiment. Well, Today, we are in Kyoto, and if you go to the northwest, then there is a site for Kamiokande. Well, the site looks like this. So, in the mountain area, actually inside the mountain, there was Kamiokande, and we worked in this place. Well, of course, in order to do the experiment, we have to have a detector. And in fact, we needed to construct a detector. Therefore, in the spring of 1983, we came to the experimental site and worked for the construction. And this photo was taken during the construction. So, in this morning, these people went into the mine. Actually, yes, our experiment was located in the mine, active mine. So anyway, in the middle, you see Professor Koshiba. He was the leader of this experiment, and later he received Nobel Prize in Physics in 2002 based on his neutrino studies in Kamiokande. Anyway, after this, we entered into the mine, and we worked in the mine to construct the detector. And this photo shows the construction of the detector. Well, as I said, the detector was 16 meters high, and we had to install the photodetectors onto the wall of the detector, wall of the tank. And therefore, after many discussions, we decided to use this plastic boat to install the photodetectors. Well, certainly the working condition was not very good, but, well, we thought this is a safe way. If we drop from the boat, we do not die, so it's okay. So anyway, we worked on these boats for about 2 months, and we successfully finished the construction. Anyway, I enjoyed these works very much. And also, I was excited because I thought the data from Kamiokande may contribute to physics much. And around that time, that was the first year PhD course student, I decided to be a physicist. And I think I was really lucky to be involved in such an experiment that fit to my interest and work style. Well, actually, I liked this kind of work very much. Well, experiment started in July 1983. Unfortunately, the proton lifetime was much longer than predicted by the theory in the 1970s. Therefore, we were unable to observe proton decays. Instead, we observed many background events to the search for proton decays. And the most serious background to the search for proton decay was the neutrino interactions inside the detector. And these neutrinos are created in the atmosphere of the Earth. Well, cosmic ray particles come into the Earth, and if they come into the atmosphere, they interact with an air nucleus, then typically pions are produced. And pions are unstable particles, therefore decay to other particles. And during these decays, neutrinos are created. So these neutrinos, well, most of them simply pass through the Earth, but some of them interact in the Kamiokande detector, and therefore these could be a background to the search for proton decays. Well, as I said, Kamiokande was unable to observe proton decays. But let me tell you our studies around 1986. Of course, we still wanted to observe proton decays. But by then, we had many neutrino backgrounds. Therefore, we wanted to better separate the proton decay signal and the neutrino background. And for this, we developed new software to improve the proton decay analysis. And indeed, we developed. But of course, if you develop a new software, you have to check this software very extensively. So we did various tests. And as a kind of final test, we checked the neutrino type that were observed in Kamiokande. We wanted to check how many electron neutrinos and how many muon neutrinos were observed. Then we found that the number of muon neutrino events was much fewer than expected. Well, of course, this was a test of the program. Therefore, our initial conclusion was there must be something wrong in the program. So we thought there must be some mistakes somewhere in the data analysis. So we started various studies to find out mistakes. Well, actually, that was about 40 years ago. And in fact, I think 40 years ago, we had more time. Well, we checked the analysis program for about 1 year in various ways. Well, it was possible to spend this kind of long time to really simply study the mistake in the software. But anyway, after 1 year of these studies, we concluded that a muon neutrino deficit cannot be due to any major problem in the data analysis. So then at this stage, we decided that we should report this data to the community. So we wrote a paper. And in fact, the paper was quite simple. We simply counted the number of muon neutrino events observed in Kamiokande. That was, I don't remember exactly, 80-some. And compared with the expected number of neutrino events, which was more than 140. So there was clearly a deficit of muon neutrino events. And in addition, we studied the number of electron neutrinos observed. And in this case, the observation and the expectation agreed reasonably well. So that was all we reported. And in fact, we didn't know why this happened. So we had no clear idea what was the cause of the deficit. But I was most excited with the data. And I changed my research completely from the proton decay studies or proton decay searches to neutrino studies to know what is happening in neutrinos. Well, we reported this data, but for several years, there was no supporting data from the other experiments. And finally, in 1991 and 92, another large water Cherenkov detector, IMB experiment, observed the deficit of muon neutrinos. Well, at that time, I was really happy that a similar effect was observed by an independent experiment. Anyway, with this muon neutrino deficit only, it was not possible to find out the cause of the deficit. But, certainly there could be several possibilities. But from the beginning, one of the possibilities was neutrino oscillations. And let me tell you what are neutrino oscillations. This phenomenon was predicted more than 60 years ago, theoretically. And according to these people who predicted neutrino oscillations, if neutrinos have mass, neutrinos change their type or flavor from one type to the other. For example, a muon neutrino could oscillate to tau neutrinos. And here, I show the probability that a muon neutrino to remain muon neutrinos and the probability that muon neutrino change to tau neutrino. So please look at the blue line. A neutrino is created at point 0, then begin to propagate to the right. Then at some point, the probability that muon neutrino to remain muon neutrino goes down. And at that time, tau neutrino is appearing. But if this neutrinos still propagate, then muon neutrino survival probability come back to unity. So this way, muon neutrino survival probability oscillate. So this is the neutrino oscillation. And if this is happening, we can naturally explain the deficit of muon neutrinos because a fraction of muon neutrinos are changing to tau neutrinos. But of course, there are many other possibilities to explain the data. So we wanted to understand what happened. Well, we wanted to understand if the deficit was due to neutrino oscillations or some other phenomena. And for this, we thought this way. Well, as I said, neutrinos are created by cosmic ray interactions. Therefore, some of these neutrinos come from above. And these neutrinos come to the detector after traveling a short distance. Therefore, they may have no time to oscillate. However, on the other hand, some of the neutrinos are created in the other side of the Earth. And these neutrinos have to travel long distance before interacting in the Kamiokande detector. Therefore, they may have enough time to oscillate. So if this picture is correct, we should be able to observe the up versus down asymmetry of the atmospheric muon neutrinos. Well, certainly we wanted to observe this effect in Kamiokande, but Kamiokande was too small to observe this kind of phenomena. So we needed a much larger detector. And therefore, we needed super Kamiokande. Well, super Kamiokande is an extremely large water Cherenkov detector. It contains 50,000 tons of extremely clean water. By the way, this is an international collaboration. We have about 230 collaborators from these countries. Well, and I want to again tell you, we needed the super Kamiokande detector therefore, we needed to construct a detector. And we worked in underground to construct the detector. And this photo was taken in the spring of 1995 when we constructed the detector. So in that year, these many people worked in underground to construct the detector. And I want to say about 70 to 80% of them are Kamiokande collaborators. So physicists worked on the construction. Anyway, the construction went well, and we started the experiment in April 96. And soon, we began to observe these neutrino events. This is a typical muon neutrino events. And the event rate of these neutrinos is about 10 per day. And so, therefore, we study these neutrinos, and we study these events as a team. And I think, indeed, we worked very efficiently. And in 2 years, we came to an important conclusion, and we presented our result at the Neutrino Conference in 1998. This is one of the slides we presented at the conference, by the way. Well, of course, today I'm presenting this talk by PowerPoint, but in the last century, we didn't have PowerPoint. Therefore, we used some kind of old technology. We copied the data to a transparent plastic sheet and wrote various comments and presented this sheet. And in fact, well, this slide was very important. In particular, please look at the lower panel. This is for muon neutrinos, and the horizontal axis is the zenith angle. Cosine theta 1 means downgoing particle, -1 means upward-going particles. They came from the other side of the Earth. And black circles with the error bars show the data, and hatched histogram show the expectation. The expectation does not include neutrino oscillations. Then you find for downgoing neutrinos, the data and the expectation agreed very well. On the other hand, for upward-going neutrinos, the data showed essentially a factor of 2 deficit compared with the expectation. So this was the data, and this can be naively explained if we include neutrino oscillations, namely neutrinos coming from the other side of the Earth. They travel long distance, and therefore, while propagating long distance, they change their type. And therefore, when they arrive to super Kamiokande detector, the probability that muon neutrino to remain muon neutrino is half. So this way, we were able to convince the world neutrino community that neutrinos do oscillate. Well, of course, we reported this result at the neutrino conference, but well, something unexpected happened. The US president in 1998, President Clinton gave a talk at MIT's commencement, and he mentioned about the discovery of neutrino oscillations. Well, he said, just yesterday in Japan, physicists announced a discovery that tiny neutrinos have mass. Now, that may not mean much to most Americans, but it may change our most fundamental theories, from the nature of the smallest subatomic particles to how the universe itself works. and indeed how it expands. And of course, as the US president, he mentioned that US physicists are also working in Super Kamiokande. Then he continued, the larger issue is that these kinds of findings have implications that are not limited to the laboratory. They affect the whole of society, not only our economy, but our very view of life, our understanding of our relations with others, and our place in time. So I think we were really honored to hear this kind of remark from the US president on the next day of our discovery announcement. We were really honored. By the way, before moving on, I want to mention about Professor Koshiba. As I said, Professor Koshiba was my thesis advisor and the leader of the Kamiokande experiment. And well, today I talked about the early days of studies in Kamiokande. And when we found the atmospheric neutrino deficit, actually he strongly supported our analysis. This support was indeed very important to convince the collaboration to publish our first paper on the atmospheric neutrino deficit in 1988. And after the publication of the first paper, the reaction of the world community was actually not very positive. Therefore, well, to be honest, there were hesitations in Kamiokande to write another atmospheric neutrino paper. However, Professor Koshiba argued strongly that Kamiokande should publish the second atmospheric neutrino paper. So I think without him, it was not possible for Kamiokande to publish the second paper in 1992. Anyway, because of him, Kamiokande was always the front runner in the atmospheric neutrino studies. So this suggests the importance of the leader. And I believe many of you become the leader in science. So you'll have a very important role in the future. Now, before finishing, I want to briefly discuss another discovery of neutrino oscillations. Well, actually, more than 50 years ago, people observed neutrinos coming from the sun. And this experiment, called the homestake experiment, observed solar neutrinos for the first time. However, the observed event rate was only about 1/3 of the prediction. Then, in the 20th century, several other experiments were able to observe solar neutrinos, but all of these experiments indeed observed the deficit of solar neutrinos. But solar neutrino problem remained unsolved during the 20th century. By the way, Ray Davis received Nobel Prize in Physics in 2002 for the observation of solar neutrinos. And this solar neutrino problem was very well understood to be due to neutrino oscillations. And the main player was the SNOW experiment in Canada. This experiment was located extremely deep, 2 kilometers deep underground, and it used 1,000 tons of heavy water, D2O. Well, there's a reason that they used D2O, heavy water. With D2O, it's possible to observe the total neutrino flux independent of the neutrino type. Also, it is possible to observe the electron neutrino flux only. Then, the Snow experiment observed if they observed the total neutrino flux, the flux was just as calculated. On the other hand, if they observed electron neutrino flux only, the observed event rate was about 1/3 of the expectation. Since the sun can only generate electron neutrinos, this data clearly indicates that nu E produced in the sun changed to nu mu and nu tau. So this was clear evidence for neutrino oscillations. That was around 2001, 2002. Okay, now I talked about the discovery of neutrino oscillations, but you may wonder why we are so excited with the small neutrino mass. Well, certainly other particles have mass, quarks have mass, electrons have mass, and so on. Well, still, we think it's very important to know that neutrinos have small mass. And let me convince you that the observation of neutrino mass is important. Here, I show the mass of quarks and charged leptons. Now, in the last 25 years of neutrino mass studies, we understand the neutrino mass rather well. So let me plot the neutrino mass here. They are here. So you find neutrino mass plotted in very different place in this figure. And well, please be careful about the horizontal axis. Then you immediately find that neutrino mass is approximately, or maybe more than, 10 orders of magnitude smaller than the corresponding mass of quarks and charged leptons. So, compared with the mass of quarks and charged leptons, the neutrino mass is more than 10 orders of magnitude smaller. So, neutrino mass is extremely small. And we believe this is the key to better understand elementary particles and the universe. And therefore, we are excited. And indeed, in the last 25 years, there have been many neutrino oscillation experiments. And here, I listed the neutrino oscillation experiments that contributed to our study, to our understanding of neutrino mass and mixing. So you see, there are many, and also I want to say, still more will come. So we are really excited. Okay, well, before finishing this talk, I want to briefly discuss what I am doing now. Well, okay, I changed from neutrinos to gravitational waves. In April 2008, I became the director of our institute, and at that point, I was no more able to spend substantial time to my research on neutrinos. At the same time, I wanted to begin something new and exciting with my partial time as a researcher. And in our institute, the gravitational wave project was selected for many years as the main future project of the institute. Furthermore, gravitational waves have the fundamental importance in understanding the gravity and the universe. So I decided to join and help the Kagura gravitational wave project. By the way, I forgot to tell you about about gravitational waves. Well, gravitational waves were predicted by Albert Einstein more than 100 years ago. For example, if there is a binary black hole system, then we expect a strong gravitational wave emission. And finally, these two black holes should be merged, creating a new heavier black hole. In fact, almost after 100 years from the initial prediction of gravitational wave, LIGO project in the United States observed the gravitational wave signals for the first time. We think this was really a great discovery. At that moment, the gravitational wave astronomy was born. And indeed, the three key persons to lead this LIGO project received Nobel Prize in Physics in 2017, only 2 years later. So, gravitational waves should be indeed a very important topic. And therefore, we have been constructing the Kagura laser interferometer. It is a 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer laser interferometer located deep underground in Kamioka. And this project was actually approved in 2010. And since then, we have been constructing the very large underground laser interferometer. The left figure shows the 3 kilometer arm tunnel and the 3 kilometer vacuum tube. And the central area of this experiment looks like this. And we have about 400 collaborators, mainly from the Asian countries and regions. And well, now, if we look at the global map of the gravitational wave detectors, there are 2 detectors in the United States and 1 in Europe. So Kagura will be the 3rd. And in fact, we'd like to work together because the scientific output will be maximized by the global gravitational wave network. So Kagura has been planning to start observations in the global network with LIGO and Virgo from the spring of this year. Unfortunately, there was a big earthquake on January 1st this year nearby. So unfortunately, we are just working for the recovery from the damage of the earthquake. But anyway, we are hoping to start the observation as soon as possible, maybe, or hopefully by the end of this year. Okay, let me summarize. Atmospheric neutrino deficit was observed unexpectedly by proton decay experiments. Subsequently, in 1998, Super Kamiokande discovered neutrino oscillations, which shows that neutrinos have mass. The discovery of non-zero neutrino mass opened a window to study physics beyond the standard model of particle physics. And well, today I didn't discuss, but neutrinos with small mass might also be the key to understand the fundamental questions of the universe. And well, I was involved in this discovery, and I feel that I was extremely fortunate. I had very good advisors, colleagues, and I was involved in very good scientific projects. So the final message from me is, if you work hard and if you are lucky, nature will kindly tell us the secret of it. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Professor Kajita, thank you very much for your valuable presentation. Okay, then now let's move on Q&A session. If you have any question, please raise your hand and please come to the microphones. We have 2 microphones. And before asking your question, I would appreciate it if you could also include your name and affiliation. Okay, any question? Okay.
Lecture. My name is Ryuichi Nishiori from Nagasaki University. So, Kamiokande, the shape of Kamiokande and Super Kamiokande is like circle. Why is so circle? So you show page 30 in your lecture. So to observe neutrino oscillation. So there are many shapes, so like pentagon or ball. But so Kamiokande, the shape of Kamiokande is Super Kamiokande is like circle. Why it is so designed?
You mean the cylindrical shape?
Shape, yeah.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Well, essentially, this cylindrical design is based on money. We think, well, certainly a large volume is very important, but in order to achieve the large volume, of course, maybe the complete sphere could be a best way. However, the construction of the completely spherical detector is very complicated. And compared with the spherical detectors, cylindrical detectors are much easier to construct, much easier to design. So we simply based on money available, we decided the cylindrical detector.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then next is
Hi, I'm Daniel from the University of Tokyo, and I wanted to ask, when you joined ICRR, were you expecting your work there to be completely independent of your neutrino work, or do you hope that one day you can combine something like neutrino astronomy and gravitational wave astronomy?
Okay. When I came to ICRR, to be honest, I never thought I work in gravitational waves. Well, of course, at the time, the time I came to ICRR was 1988. Well, to me, neutrino physics was really, everything in my mind, everything. Therefore, I really had no idea to do a gravitational wave.
Good to know for the future. Thank you.
My name is Kyoko from University of Tokyo. So thank you very much for the lecture. And basically, I have 2 questions. The one is, as I heard your presentation today, then you got the interest for the neutrino, now your gravity wave. So I feel like you got the interest about the space, a universe itself. So I wonder how you get the interest to get to think about the universe. Because maybe because of your childhood experience, whatever. So
sorry, I cannot hear you very well. Sorry. Could you speak a little bit slower?
Sorry. How you get the interest to think about the space or universe? I just thought that maybe from your experience in your childhood or what so. Then another thing is.
Okay. Let me answer one by one.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, certainly, even from the small child, when I was a small child, I was interested in understanding the universe. Yes, but also at the same time, I was interested in understanding the small world, particles. Therefore, when I started my research, I decided to work on the small scale physics. But well, with time, well, of course, the science community's interest is changing, my interest is changing, and therefore, in 2008, 9, 10, I changed to gravitational waves.
Thank you very much. And then my second question is, because you take over Kamiokande, so I wonder how you take over your research or Kamiokande's project to next generation, how you get to.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, so I think your question is what was the motivation to think about the second generation super Kamiokande experiment? Right. Yeah, thank you. In fact, yes, we had a very strong reason. First of all, well, I didn't discuss, but Kamiokande observed a neutrino burst in 1987. This neutrino burst came from a supernova explosion. And this was indeed a very significant discovery. In fact, Professor Koshiba received Nobel Prize with this observation. So, well, first of all, with this discovery, many people in Japan knew neutrinos. In addition, as I discussed today, we observed the atmospheric muon neutrino deficit in Kamiokande. This was really a puzzle at that time, but people realized this could be important. Therefore, people knew that it's very important to understand this problem by the much better detector. In addition, well, furthermore, in Kamiokande, we observed solar neutrinos, and also we observed or confirmed the solar neutrino deficit. Also, this problem was very well known, and people, of course, recognized this should be understood by the next generation, much better detector. So we had really very good reasons to construct the second generation super Kamiokande detector.
Thank you very much.
Who's next?
Thank you very much for your talk, Dr. Kajita. I'm Sopak. I'm from Keio University. I was wondering, most of your experiment involve a large scale with a facility that might cost a lot of money. I mean, in terms of funding. How did you convince those funders to fund your mega projects? And doing this many years.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think I have already half explained. We had very strong scientific reasons to construct the super Kamiokande detector. And therefore, at least the Japanese scientific community agreed that we should have the next generation super Kamiokande detector. Then, around 1990, I think, the Japanese government was also convinced that it is really important. Therefore, the super Kamiokande experiment was funded. But yes, as you mentioned, it took several years before the approval of the super Kamiokande detector.
Hi, I'm Lee from Mahidol University, Thailand. When I have listened to your talk, it's very impressive, and I just thinking about the neutrinos can pass through everything in my brain. It's just oh, maybe we can find some treasure under the ground in the next future. But for my questions, are there any industrials or the fields where the neutrino technologies is expected to have the significant impact in the near future?
You mean industrial use of
Or
neutrinos?
any fields that you think in the near future we're going to have, like using the neutrinos energies or the technologies in the near future?
Thank you. Well, my answer to this question is very clear. No, no possibility.
And when you expect we, as our humankind, gonna have the benefits for like this kind of the discoveries for the neutrinos, like how many years? What do you think we're gonna get? Like how many years we're gonna get benefit for the neutrinos and can use in our life? Or like we have to wait 100 years or 200 years?
I have, again, no idea. Maybe 1,000 years, I don't know. But anyway, in my opinion, well, these kind of studies are actually necessary because through these studies, we understood particles and the universe better. And this kind of knowledge is a common knowledge for all of us. And therefore, this kind of study is essentially expanding our the horizon of our knowledge. So in this way, I think this is very important.
Thank you for a lot of questions, but I'm sorry to limit them. Last two questions. Yeah, now we have two persons. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Professor Kajita. So I'm Masaya Sakakibara from the University of Tokyo. So you changed your research topic from the neutrino to the gravitational wave. But I think that it is necessary to obtain some basic research knowledge before moving into some new research topic, right? So how did you get the basic knowledge about the gravitational wave before moving into the research region? Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I think you are partly right. Yes, we need to know the basic things on the research topic. Yeah, but on the other hand, if I decide to study, say, general relativity, gravitational waves, and so on, before joining to the experiment, it may take many years, and I thought this could be too late. And therefore, based on my mind, I changed my research topic, and at the same time, I tried to learn the basics in the new field.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, next to the last question, please.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your great talk. I am Tae Pyu from National University of Singapore. My question is that although I'm from biological and medical science background, I am always amazed by all these physics concepts about the things about the universe, like black holes or those very small particles. So my question is, over the course of time, we have found atoms. At first, we thought atoms were the smallest particles. At first, we thought atoms were the smallest particles, but later we continue to find electrons, neutrons, etc. And now we have much smaller particles like quarks and neutrinos now. So, Professor, how do you think in future, if we have more advanced technologies, are we going to find much smaller particles than all these neutrinos and quarks?
Oh, thank you very much. Well, it's very difficult to predict the future research results, but, well, to be honest, experimentally, it will be extremely difficult or extremely unlikely to observe the, say, smaller scale structure in particles. So I think we may not be able to experimentally find any smaller scale. Well, because now we have a reasonably good theory, and assuming that these particles, electrons, quarks, and neutrinos, assuming these particles are point-like, then we can explain various data extremely well. There is no indication for the, say, smaller scale structure. Therefore, I think it will be extremely difficult to find the next scale.
Thank you, Professor. And another quick question. Can we find neutrinos in the living cells?
In the universe?
No, in the living cells, like cells in the body. Yep.
Okay. Well, certainly, neutrinos come into the cell, but immediately go out.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. A lot of very interesting question. Okay, then now it's time to close this session. Finally, yeah, let's thank Professor Kajita again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kajita and Dr. Takeda. Let's show our appreciation with a round of applause.